Hi, everybody. Welcome to Queers and Soaps. I'm Tommy, and today I'm joined by Lynn.
Greetings.
Today we are back talking about Felicity. We watched episodes 4 and 5. So I'll roll the credits and we'll get right into it. So episode 4 was titled Boggled. And
Perfect title.
Ironically, or maybe not ironically, it opened with a game of Boggle.
Right. Parker Brothers must have got some commission for that free ad time, but yes.
Which I don't know if this is true, but for me, it felt like a very 90s game because I used to play Boggle back then.
Which we're talking, this is in 98 too, so it's kind of appropriate.
So it's kind of like a flash forward, and then we step back to the Dear Sally.
Right, because we do hear Felicity narrating, don't we? And she's kind of talking to Sally about what's going on in New York, and she kind of jumps around. But at first, I think she does kind of talk about her and Noel.
So an interesting, I don't know if this is something that happens throughout the series, but for me, like this early on, was we kind of saw from Noel's perspective, like when she was speaking to him, it was just silent, and it was just like him like admiring like her lips moving, instead of like looking at it through Felicity's perspective. I felt like that was different. We haven't really done that.
Right.
Noel's really cute. I'm into Noel.
Well, the great thing about how they film this stuff is they kind of take you into the persona of the character on like how they fall in love with that other person that they're looking at. And we've had Felicity kind of do that with Ben too, where she's not hearing anything. And now we got Noel doing it with Felicity. So it's obviously a cue to us, the audience, that, well, he's fallen for her pretty hard, pretty quick.
Yeah. So they're playing Boggle. He's into her, and he leans in and goes for the kiss, which leads to him being on top of her. And of course, her roommate walks in and sees this.
Yes, just at that moment, Megan comes in and stares, and they're both like, But then doesn't Felicity like interrupt as she's saying all this to Sally, and she's like, but first, let me back up first.
Right.
And then she does. And she starts talking about Ben and her recent encounter with him. Look at you roll your eyes. Because doesn't he end up like touching her shoulder or something like that? And she's all like,
I noted that. She in her head, she's like, oh my God, he touched my shoulder. He touched my shoulder.
Right? Oh, it's funny.
Things are still like a little weird between her and Julie.
Yeah, because exactly. You know, Julie doesn't know how to step off because of Ben, and you know, now Ben's trying to try out for track, and and
I was like, Ben's in his boom booms.
Yeah, he kind of was in his boom booms, that's for sure.
So Julie and Felicity are in the laundry room.
Thank you. Yep.
Kind of where they have their little makeup session.
Yes.
Which Felicity kind of breaks the ice by offering her a dryer sheet.
Exactly.
And we also meet, what's his name? This new like recurring character that they were calling him Pink Boy. Was that what they were calling him?
Well, yeah, they called them the Pink Guy is what they were calling him.
Because he put a red shirt in his whites, and now all his clothes are pink.
Yes, because he all of a sudden, you're right. Julie says to Felicity, you know what? I decided if I want to see Ben, I'm going to see Ben. And then all of a sudden they hear this guy, you know, freaking out because he's like, somebody put some dye in the washer. And Julie reaches in and pulls out this big, bright red sweater. And she's like, have you washed this before? And he's like, I've never washed before. So this is his first time doing a load of laundry. And she's like, usually you don't put your colors in with your whites, and all of his stuff turned pink. And she's kind of fascinated by him right away too. So it's kind of funny. Both girls are talking about Ben, but neither one's seeing him. And now they're each kind of been hanging out with other guys.
Side things going on.
Exactly.
Yeah, I liked Julie's directness, because I felt like she was also kind of being like, I wasn't doing what I wanted because I was worried about your feelings, but you keep telling me, so I'm just gonna go at face value and go off of what you're telling me, and I'm gonna do what I want instead of not doing it because I think you might not like it.
Yes.
So I
But
like
meanwhile, the pink guy's name is Zach, so I finally got
that.
his name down because
Right.
I was like scrolling trying to find it.
I didn't look him up. He's very familiar. I feel like he may have been a child actor in some children's shows, and this was like maybe his first like adult role.
He was on My So-Called Life with Claire Danes.
Yes. Okay, that's why he looks so familiar.
Yep.
Wow, you just blew my mind with that. So apparently he's a film student, and him and Julie, they have a few run-ins, and he wants to show her his movie, and she first says, "Oh, it's really good," and then he like asks like for critiques, but when she starts critiquing it, he can't handle it.
Right. At first, she's like, I know nothing about this. And she's trying to be outstanding. She's like, no, give it to me straight. And
Yeah.
she's like, I didn't understand how that guy got shot and what
Mhm.
happened in this scene. And he right away is like, he takes it all personal. And you do when, especially when you're of that age and you're doing something creative and all of a sudden you're getting these critiques and he's
Mhm.
just kind of silently taking all this in. And now she's being kind of blah, 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 blah about all the things, and he's probably feeling like it's picked apart. So he's like, well, you should probably go. Thanks for the popcorn. And he hands it back to her. And he's like, I only got a few hours of using this equipment. And so she gets up and leaves. And she's a little ticked off too that he was so put off by her critique.
Right. So we saw a little bit more of Elena this week, or in this episode.
Yes. Hmm.
Apparently there's a lottery for a mini fridge for the dorms.
Right.
But she opens with telling Felicity the rumor that her and Noel are sleeping together.
Right. Because the two of them end up being lab partners.
Yeah.
So she's really grilling Felicity, like, are you good at this? And blah, blah, blah. And she's like, are you asking if I'm going to bring your grade down? And she's like, hey, I've got a right to know. And then she's like,
Yeah.
what's the deal with you and the RN? Are you
Yeah.
sleeping together? And she just kind of boldly puts it out there.
That scene where they were like splitting up for lab partners, I thought it was like really like rude and like kind of embarrassing that the
Right.
person sitting right next to her just got up, like didn't
Right.
even like
Walks away.
was like, you're not an option.
Nothing.
And she just like
It was funny. Oh, God.
So Felicity, I feel like she doesn't know how she feels. Like she likes that she can talk to Noel,
Right.
but she's like, do I like him? I think I like him. He likes me. We're kind of going on. He makes a dinner reservation, and she I think she calls it a not date because it's supposed to be like a meeting to talk about how they feel about each other or whatever.
Exactly. Since he kissed her, he kind of wants to have that time together to talk. And she's kind of telling Julie, she's like, we're just friends. We're just friends. But then when Felicity and Noel go to dinner and he's looking all dapper and really good and kind of saying some really nice things, she excuses herself and she goes and calls Julie and she's like, am I crazy? I think I kind of like him. And
Yeah.
Julie's kind of encouraging her to go for it too. So yeah.
I had a thought during the scene. I'm like, the scene wouldn't exist today because like you would just have like text under the table. Like, what do I do? Like, you wouldn't get up to
100%.
call somebody because
Right?
of
Yep, exactly.
but rewinding a little bit. So Felicity gets a mini fridge, and
Yes.
you know, Elena's eyebrow kind of goes up because it's like, oh, you got it because you're sleeping with the RA.
Uh-huh.
But Megan puts her underwear in the fridge.
Yeah, Felicity put an apple in there and closes it, and then the next time she checks it, there's like rolled up underwear and a tub of I can't believe
I
it's
believe
not
it's
butter.
not butter or something.
And she like pulls the underwear out and she's like hanging it and turns around and Megan, as usual, is coming out of her closet and she's like, are these yours? And she's like, I haven't done that in such a long time. And she's like, do you mind not putting my underwear in or your underwear in my fridge? And she's like, God, sorry. And she takes it back. And she's making Felicity feel like she's the rude one here.
Yeah, and
And
she
then
ate her
she's like,
apple.
right. She's like, did you take my apple? And she's like, yeah. She goes, but I left you the
She's like, I
I can't believe
replaced
it's
it.
not
She's like,
butter.
not butter is like not an apple.
She's like, this is so good. She's like, would you not eat my food? And she's like, okay. Those two do not get along at all.
It was funny because when she was like, "Are these your underwear?" She's like, "Don't worry, they're clean." Like, the guy makes it
Right?
better.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So back to the dinner now.
Yes.
Um, Noel confesses that he has a girlfriend in Chicago.
And
Hannah, I think
Felicity's
is her
kind of
name?
blown away. Hannah, yes.
I'm having a memory. Is Hannah played by, Garner?
They haven't cast her yet, but when they do cast her, yes, Jennifer Garner
Jennifer
does
Garner.
play the role.
Okay, so I'm having memories now.
Yeah, we're a couple episodes out from seeing Hannah, but we will see
Yeah.
Hannah this season.
I was like, "I wonder if they're gonna show her face in the picture," and they didn't, and I'm like, "They didn't cast her
Nope,
yet."
they're really clever on how they did all this. But yeah, she was ticked
Yeah.
that
Oh, she made a scene.
yeah,
She's like, "Here's
she
this
really did.
flashbang."
Hmm. And like he's embarrassed and looking around, and she just get up and storm out, and he's just kind
Yeah.
of left there like, whoa,
Well, she
that just
shouts, and then
happened.
she stands up and basically announces to the restaurant that he's disgusting, and then sits down,
Right? Right?
and then she storms out.
Oh,
Um, so he was dressed in, like, a suit and tie. I felt like she was a little underdressed. She actually looked like she was kinda dressed like a cater waiter.
right. And you know what? Maybe she didn't know that he was taking her to such a fancy place. You know what I
Maybe,
mean? Is kind of how I look at it.
maybe.
Yeah.
Um, so I called, like, '90s gay panic on this whole pink guy thing because, like, I'm like, I wear pink all the time, but I remember around the time I started wearing pink, it was like, ooh, guys are wearing pink, like 2003, 2004-ish, and this is '98. So maybe it
Yeah.
was still kinda like, guys don't wear pink.
I think the big thing too, when you looked at how they messed up his wardrobe, it wasn't solid pinks. Like he
No, there
had
was
white
a lot of
shirts
pink.
on, and there was
Yeah,
like pink. So it would look very tie dye. It's like it looked like he took his entire wardrobe and tried to tie dye it into
yeah,
pink, and it was like it was a very sloppy job. So I think he was more embarrassed because of that, because it was the only clothes he had to wear, and he had to
right.
just deal with it. I'm surprised he wasn't wearing the red hoodie all the time to try and cover up what was underneath, but he was upset too because he goes, I even have a favorite pair of jeans and they've got a hue of pink on them, and so he's just frustrated. So he kind of tries to apologize to Julie, doesn't he? Because he's like, I'm reacting from what happened with my clothing. You're the first person I showed my movie to, and then when you did critique it, I took it way too personal. He's like, can we just start again? And yeah.
Yeah. Um, Felicity decides to give the fridge to Elena. She drags it under
Yes.
a blanket to Elena's dorm room,
Yes.
and Elena's like, "I don't want this," and she's like, "If you don't take it, I'm either gonna throw it out or return it to the university so they can give it to somebody else." So Elena takes it, and she's like, "You could use it anytime you want." And she's like, "Thanks."
Exactly. Then
Um,
earlier in this episode, I kind of want to bring it out there too. Ben went and tried out and did some competitive running on the track team to get ready.
mhm,
And then on the day of the tryouts for the track meet, Felicity sneaks out to go watch him from the bleachers. And
mhm,
meanwhile, Noel's trying to find her to apologize for what happened at their dinner when he told
mhm,
her about Hannah. And he goes and watches Felicity at the track meet and looks down and sees Ben running. He's like, rolls his eyes and he's like, yes, of course. It's all about Ben. And he turns around and leaves. And
mhm,
Felicity watches as Ben's running and the three or four other guys against him that are running eventually one by one all pass him. So he obviously doesn't make the cut on the track team. And
yeah,
Felicity just kind of stays silent in the sands and
yeah,
doesn't say anything.
right. She also mentioned that she did that in high school. She, like, watched him try out.
Yep.
So they have
Yep.
this whole history he doesn't even know about. She's been stalking him for a very long time.
Completely. Completely. Yep.
Um, Noel and
And
her
then I'm,
actually have a conversation,
yeah.
and it's kind of like paralleled with her Dear Sally conversation, about, how sometimes you find the person that's like your person that you could talk to and confide in like the oddest places.
Hmm.
Um, I keep thinking about how you said Sally never appears, and I find that so weird that she
We
never.
just hear her voice and that's it. Janine Garofalo is talking back all the time, but yep.
And Felicity kind of grabs his hand, and they just kind of hold hands, and that's kind of like them reconciling their friendship, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
Um, After he explains, like, she's, um, in Chicago, his girlfriend's in Chicago. Um, I guess they talked about that they could see other people if the
Right.
opportunity arise.
Yeah, like, she was a grade under him, much like him and Felicity, so, like, he left and went off to college first, then she
Mhm.
finished her senior year of high school, and then she went to I feel like it's a school in Chicago,
North
I can't remember the name of it.
I feel like he said Northwestern.
Maybe so, yeah, so she's in Chicago and he's in New York, and they're trying to make it work, but he's like, "Basically, I'm when I kissed you, I was missing my girlfriend," and that was how he tried to align it.
Yeah. We had a few obligatory, Felicity walking through the city in slow motion shot
Mhm.
for the promos.
Well, and so when she is walking through the city, sure enough, she sees Ben sitting on the steps. And
Mhm.
she's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, I was watching some guy. He was playing with his dog. They're gone now." And you can tell he's just consumed by the track thing. And she doesn't well, kind of what does she do? She asks him politely, how'd that track thing work out? And he's like, "Oh, I'm not gonna do it. I just don't have time for it." And he doesn't confess what really happened, even though she knows what happened. And she just politely doesn't let him know how
Right.
much she's been stalking him that much more and lets it
Oh, I know, I
go.
saw I saw you lose.
Right? Exactly. Otherwise, he's going to walk down to the police station next and file a restraining order.
Yeah. Um, is this the episode where he says, "Are you still working in the records or the admissions department?" She's like, "Yeah, but I have to get another job. I have an interview at Dean and DeLuca."
You're right, because then I think it is because then in the next episode she does have that interview.
Okay.
Yep.
They, like, really slowly rolled out everybody, huh?
Totally. But if you notice the opening credits
Uh-huh.
when they play the theme song and it's a bunch of stills, and I read an article on how they went and did a photo shoot during the day with the cast and thought that out. They must have did that photo shoot like 4 or 5 episodes in. Because
Mhm.
let's face it, a lot of these, like some of the people like Elena and stuff, weren't even on until episode 3, and
Mhm.
Dean and DeLuca wasn't mentioned till like episode 5.
Mhm.
And yet, one of the stills in the opening credits is somebody. I think it might be Ben with his hand on a coffee mug, and it says Dean
Yeah.
and DeLuca on the coffee
Or
mug.
Noel. I think it was Noel, 'cause I
Yeah.
saw
Okay.
that, I was like,
Yep.
"Oh, he has the cup."
Yep. Exactly.
So I actually looked up Dean and DeLuca today, and it is a chain in the city.
Thank you.
It's a high-end grocery store, though, it's not a coffee
Oh. So
spot.
I think it's really evolved from what it was back in 1998.
Okay.
Yeah.
Unless it always was, and we were just seeing a section of it, and she just worked in the cafe part of it.
Don't know. I'd have to
Um,
Wikipedia their history and see what's going on
yeah,
there.
apparently it came around in, like, 1979, and
Okay.
it's like a high-end grocery store.
And you really hadn't heard it or seen it or bumped into any of it? No.
No, I guess I can't afford it.
It's like, I'm just walking by,
I'll just
sir.
put a Dunkin' in Starbucks.
Right? Oh, funny.
Um, was that it for episode 4?
I mean, yeah, I'm trying to think. It kind of maybe just ended with some resolve between her and Noel.
Mhm,
And, Julie is kind of indifferent about the pink guy. You know what I mean? They kind of made their peace, and that's that.
mhm.
And then that's kind of just how it ended. Oh, it really kind of ended. I'm sorry, where now we're hearing the voiceover of Sally's tape back to Felicity. And Sally's husband has passed away, and she's met a new guy, and she's kind of resistant to telling him about her dead husband.
Right.
So Sally's trying to share some reflection back with Felicity, and Felicity went through the whole thing with Noel, finding out he's got a girlfriend and stuff like that too. So, and then that was the end,
It's funny because most of the times we see Felicity's dorm, which is huge, her
right?
room, from just her side,
Right. It's
and
like
it
the
looks like
friend set inside
like a
of the
studio apartment almost. It looks
completely like a
huge.
yeah, like I said, it looks like the friend set could fit in there too when you see Monica and Rachel's apartment, for God's
Right.
sakes.
I also kinda noticed that I thought the tape recorder looked more modern, like, they changed it up.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
more
didn't
modern
notice that,
for
but maybe.
98.
Right? It's
Yeah.
funny.
But yeah, I guess that was it. Episode 5 is titled Spooked. It was kind of Halloween themed.
Yep.
Now in the promos, they show, Felicity and Ben being robbed, at gunpoint.
Correct. Hmm.
I was not expecting that to be right at the beginning. Like, it just, like, opened up with it. I was like, "Whoa, okay, we're getting right into that."
Yeah, they were like, what were they doing? They were going to go back probably to Ben's loft and study, and they
Mhm,
come in and they're just chit chatting, and obviously the burglars are already in there, and
mhm.
startle them and push them down to the ground and make them look face down. So they probably don't get like the best looks at them,
Yeah.
and they, as Felicity's laying down, she's got a necklace on, and one of the burglars reaches down and grabs it off her and breaks it off her, and she's like, no. And then like Ben tries to stop it, and they push him down and hurt him as
Mhm.
well too, and she's like, Ben, don't. And they end up grabbing their stuff and going, and the door slams, and then we go right to the closing or opening credits. So
Yeah.
yeah, they kicked off the bat with it right away.
That felt like it would have been, like, a mid-episode thing. I was like, "Oh, okay, wow."
Yeah. Kind of leads into the whole spooked theme, which the episode was entitled to, because it was kind of cross platform for several things that then kind of roll forward in the episode.
Somehow news of this got across town to the dorms already because everybody knew about it,
Meg,
and they're, like, standing in Felicity's room.
exactly. And Megan's got like more than one line. Now she's like kind of freaked out about her roommate and what's going on. And Julie's freaking out. And Noel comes in there. And I think Elena's there already too. And then um, Megan kind of walks over and looks at Felicity's side of the room, and Elena comes over and she's like, "I know what you're doing. You're scoping her out and trying to look at her space."
She's like, "You're
And then
looking to become a single."
exactly, and the phone rings and Julie answers it, and it's Felicity's dad, and
Mhm.
she's like, "Hey, it's Julie. Felicity's not here right now.
Here's
Here's
Noel.
Noel," and she just hands the phone to him, and he's like, "Ah." And while Noel's talking to her dad, Felicity comes in, and Noel, they're so happy to see her, he
He
just,
hangs up.
without thinking, hangs up the phone. So he hangs up on her dad.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm fine, it's okay." And she kind of kicks everybody out, and the phone rings back, and it's her dad. And
Mhm.
she's like, "Hey, I'll talk to you guys later." And they all leave, and she talks to her dad. And she probably, I don't think she told her dad what happened.
No, probably not, because he would've pulled her
Yeah.
out.
Exactly. He's already not like in New York, so this would have
Yeah.
just exacerbated it basically, and he would have been like, "You're coming back home."
So Ben seems to be having a hard time dealing with the trauma of what happened. So
He calls her late.
he keeps calling her at, like, 2 a.m. to check on
Hmm.
her and make sure she's
He's
okay.
right. He's like, "I'm downstairs," and then
Yeah.
she'll invite him up, and they'll end up talking and talking and talking.
Um, we meet his roommate finally, Sean, who we've heard about, and we heard his voice, he said in the pilot.
And Sean's a big entrepreneur, in case we didn't figure that out, because Sean is ticked off that his idea book, which had like 5 years worth of different ideas, is stolen. And he's like, "I had logos in there, I had ideas, I had slogans." He's like, he looks at Ben and he's like, "Could you have done something?" And it's like, Ben's like, "Oh, buddy, I'm gonna pop you here," because I think they had guns.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because
Yeah,
Ben did get kind of injured. Like they might have hit him with one of the barrels of the gun or something like that too.
yeah.
And the cops were asking him if he needed to be checked out, and he's like, "No, no, I'm fine. I'm fine."
Um, so like we said, it's Halloween, and the dorm is being decorated for Halloween, and Alina's like freaking out that there's a witch on her door. I guess her family may have been religious, and maybe they didn't like acknowledge Halloween, so she wasn't allowed to celebrate it. And
Yeah.
she's so freaked out by the witch, she like follows. She doesn't follow him. She walks into the men's room where Noel is just gotten out of the shower and is shaving.
Right. And there's another guy in there using it, and she's like, "We're good." And the
He's like,
guy
"I'm with
just
him.
kind
We're
of
good."
leaves. Totally. And she's like, "I could have got a ghost. I could have got a goblin, but you gave me a witch." So she took it kind of personally.
Right. So Noel, I guess, asks her to go to the party with him.
Well, because he's kind of on the outs with Felicity, and obviously he had a themed idea in mind, and we learn what that theme is. And so he does. I think that's probably his way of trying to reconcile. Like, "No, we're good. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I wanna be friends with you." And he's just
yeah.
trying to make peace.
So he brings her the costume, and it's a Subway employee costume.
So they're
Um,
gonna be sandwich artists
right.
together.
He has to go to like an RA meeting. He said, "I have to go to RA meeting, something about like bulimia or something." But he said it so
Right?
nonchalant.
Right? Oh God.
So she has to like go to the party by herself, and he'll meet her there. And she calls him later from the party, and she's like, "Do you know what the number one sandwich is at Subway?" "I do," because I guess like everybody asked if they could have it.
Yes, and she quotes it back to him, and she's just ticked off that he's not there.
A little detail though, she was wearing even like the gloves that they used to make the sandwiches. Like,
Exactly.
they went full out with that costume.
They totally did.
But rewinding a little bit, prior to the party, when one of the 2 a.m. sessions between Ben and Felicity, they're like carving pumpkins in the dark because when Sean comes on, he just puts the lights on. I'm like, why wouldn't you just carve the pumpkins in the light? Why do you put carving in the dark?
And Ben's starting to finally open up to Felicity, and he's like, "Yeah, I haven't felt that way in quite a while since back at home." And she's like, "What do you mean?" And he's starting to almost reveal something, and then you're right. Sean comes in, flips on the light. He's like, "Oh, those look really good," and he starts
Eating
eating
the
some of their
Chinese.
leftover Chinese food. And then he's like, "Hey, do you want to call a cab for Felicity?" And she's like, "What?" And she thought they were going to stay and talk some more because they kind of aligned and said he was thinking of going as Frankenstein. So then
Frankenstein.
she volunteers that she'd go as the bride of Frankenstein,
Right.
which is awesome costume for her with all her hair and
I
however the
know.
hell she sprayed that up and made it look like that. That
Yeah.
had to have been like a 3-person project, even though
I
we
was
didn't see
thinking
her
about
hair
that
get
when I
done.
was looking at the white streaks they put in it. I was like,
Oh God,
they had
yes.
to put some kind of something in there to keep it off.
I mean, that was totally like almost Marge Simpson hair on top of
Right.
it too. That was pretty good.
um, so her and Julie go to the party. Julie's dressed up like Catwoman. She looks really good.
Yeah, she does.
Um, what was the pink guy supposed to be? He had like his grandfather's hat on.
Well, and didn't right before they went to the party, Felicity kind of confronted Ben's on his feelings. And at that time too, she also says, "I don't know how I'm going to tell my mom about losing my grandma's necklace because it was a
Hmm.
hand-me-down through third generation." And then she's like, "You were just opening up to me, and you've been coming over here, stopping over here late at night." And she's like, "And now you're pulling back and being reclusive." And so she's kind of ticked off, which kind of sets him off too because he does a bold-faced front, like, "You're just reading into it. You're some silly little schoolgirl who had a crush and blah blah blah." And he kind of off stands her, and so because of it,
I
it
think that
makes
was
him
after the
not
party. I think it was
well.
after.
But I feel like because they had that argument, that's why. Well, maybe it was after. I thought it
Because
was
when she
because
was
of
yelling
that.
at him, she's like, "You told me you were gonna be Frankenstein, so I dressed up as the bride."
You're right. You're right. So I thought that's what made him not be Frankenstein, but I guess you're right. He did say at the party when she found him at the party, she's like, "Hey, I thought we had a plan." And you're right. He said, "Well, Sean said we're going to dress up as
The
the
Rat
Rat
Pack.
Pack."
Mhm.
Yes, exactly. The Rat Pack, excuse me. And so he had a suit on and wasn't dressed like Frankenstein. You're right, because there was another guy there dressed like Frankenstein and she thought it was him. And then he
Yeah.
pulled up his mask and it wasn't. And so because of it, she sees him kissing a pink Power Ranger and all this type of stuff.
Yeah,
And Frankenstein gets her drink and she ends up getting pretty tipsy and pretty wasted pretty quick at the party.
that was a fun Easter egg because Amy Jo Johnson played the Pink Ranger.
Yep.
Part of me was like, probably thought like they were like, "You're gonna dress up like the Pink Ranger," and she was like, "No, that part of my life is over. I'm not doing that."
Right. So then I
They're like,
think
"Well,
J.J.
we're sticking to
Abrams
it."
wanted to do a wink to her past, basically, and had a character in
Yeah,
there, some blonde girl that Felicity ends up opening up the door because she's looking for the bathroom, probably because she's got to throw up. And she
yes,
sees Ben in there kissing the pink Power Ranger. And she's like, "I got to leave." So I'm trying to remember. She does leave by herself because we see her run across the street by
yeah, which I
herself.
thought was dangerous. I was like, "You were just robbed, and now you're just gonna run through the streets."
Exactly, because Julie stayed behind, and the pink guy, Zach, tries to apologize to her and tries to get back in her good graces because he's really interested in dating her. And he ends up kissing her, and she kind of just doesn't say anything and walks away. And he feels like
Yeah,
he kind of blew it.
yeah, that was a weird setup because I feel like they had like the emergency ladder like open because they were climbing down the steps.
Yeah, they were being a little bit crazy at that party, getting pretty wild.
I don't feel like you can do that. I don't think that that's legal.
Because then to tie it up too, after Elena got off the phone and slammed it down because she's pissed because Noel's not there yet,
Yeah.
she bumps into Blair, who's a gentleman that's dressed up like the Tin Man from The
Mhm,
Wizard of Oz.
mhm.
And like he asked her to dance, and she's kind of fascinated by him. So
Yeah.
then I think we cut to Felicity back in her dorm room crying, and Ben knocks on the door in his subway outfit.
No.
Noel does. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Noel's got a Subway outfit on with his gloves on and this hat, and he kind of sits down and he's like, "Why are you upset?" And then she's like, "Oh, Ben." And he's like, "Oh, okay, this is about Ben." And he's sitting there. They're kind of sitting across from each other on the floor, and he's just letting her kind of pour her heart out.
And then
And
she
she kind of
barfs.
leans in and she barfs all over him. And he's like, "Oh God,
He's like, "It's okay, I have
makes
gloves
me have
on."
a right." He's like, "This makes me have a whole different opinion of you."
But also, I was like, "You said you had to barf at the party, so you held that from the party, running home, crying, and you didn't throw up?
Yep.
When you have to throw up, you throw up right away. You can't hold
Well, I think
it."
she really had to go to the bathroom when she was at the party, but now
Okay,
all that alcohol and being so upset and probably running the entire way with that much liquor in it just all came back
right.
up. We've all been there. Whew.
So the next morning, Noel goes to Elena's room, I guess to apologize for, like I guess he stood her up because he was at the dorm when Felicity was
Right?
there.
He was there so late by the time he never made it to the party, I don't think,
I guess,
honestly.
yeah, and her hair is all messed up. Apparently, she, took Blair home with her.
She's like, "I got the Tin Man inside." She's like, "We just stayed up talking all night."
I was like, "Then why is your hair so messy?"
Right? Oh, it's funny. But she
I
kind
like
of
that.
lets him off the hook, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Because
Doesn't he
he
say
wants
something like, "Oh, I heard he doesn't have a heart. The Tin Man doesn't have a heart." Like, he makes a little Wizard of Oz joke.
makes his joke. He makes his Noel joke like he does.
Yeah. Um, so I guess in a way, Zach feels friend zoned by, Julie because he
Right.
kissed her
Because,
and she was kinda like, not really into that."
yeah. And then he's even playing like PlayStation or something with Ben. He's like, "I can't believe they didn't steal your PlayStation." He's like, "It's not mine, it's Sean's." And he's like, "So you dated Julie?" And he's like, "Well, we hung out." And she's like, "Yeah, I don't know how to get through to her." And then Ben's like, "I got to go." And he gets up and leaves because he's thinking about Felicity. And maybe by this point in time, the argument, you're right, between Felicity and Ben
Yes.
has happened where he's kind of, yelling at her and he's trying to be defensive. And he's like, "You got a schoolgirl crush." And she's like, "We had a plan. We were going to wear the same costumes and we were getting close and you pulled back." She's
Mhm.
like, I'm kind of over this." And then he gets up and walks out. And then a couple rows up, there's Julie who kind of turns around and she's
Yeah.
heard this whole argument and she's
I
just
love how
silent.
Julie's like, "Ooh, glad I removed myself from that situation."
I love how this show, episode after episode, the cues are so subtle and
Mhm,
so soft. And this is what I miss in daytime because daytime television used to do this through
mhm,
the 90s and the mid 2000s,
mhm.
but they let you have pause and there doesn't have to be vocabulary and dialogue every single second. They
Right.
let you, the audience member, take it in with the feeling of the music, the
Mhm.
cue and the body reactions, and it plays out so well,
Yeah.
so well.
Um, where was I going? So Ben ends up buying another necklace for Felicity.
Correct. He goes to see her at Dean and DeLuca and she won't give him the time of day, and then he orders 2 coffees and he's like, "I'm a customer now, you got to pay attention to me."
Yes, but also in the background was Javier, who we finally met, the manager.
Which we should back up and talk about his scene because when she's filling out the application, I was thinking about this today, getting ready
Oh,
for the
right. Oh my
podcast.
god, the plus side, the 16 and up.
He reads the resume, he sees that she's working at this plus size stores, and he looks at me, he goes, "Didn't they hate you?" And she goes, "Who?" And he goes, "The." And then she's like, "No, it was a really nice place. I really liked working there." And he's like, "Girl, don't you know how beautiful you are?" Is what he's thinking. And then she's like, "I'm just really tired. I had kind of an exhausting night. I was involved with a robbery and blah, blah, blah." And he's like, "Oh, really?" And they're instantly like fast friends. It's like, boom, click. He's like fascinated with this girl.
Yes. In the scene where Ben came to see her though, he's in the background and he's like on the phone with his mother, and he's like, his name is not that guy. Like he's from
His
Brooklyn.
name
His
is
name is
Samuel.
Samuel.
He's
He's like, it's a biblical name.
yes. Oh, God.
Uh, I love him.
Oh, he's so perfect. He's just, for secondary character, he's a scene stealer, is the thing.
He was the one that was in Cougar Town, right? The actor.
Yes.
Okay, and he's married.
Sans accent. He's married to the
My Big Fat Greek
My Big
Wedding.
Fat Greek Wedding actress.
Yeah,
Yes,
I can't remember her name.
yes, yes.
Yeah, which like shocked me because I he played gay really well. I always assumed that he was gay.
He did, and the accent he was using was very good. I mean, it was all very. He sold it, and you know what? I think J.J. Abrams' shtick was going to be they were going to have rotating managers of Dean and DeLuca, and he was the first one. And he does disappear. We'll see a few more, but I think because he was so popular, they bring him back then for the rest of the series.
Oh, okay.
Hmm.
Wow. Um, so Ben and Felicity sit while she's having a break,
Yeah, she's like, I
and
only got 15 minutes for my break, so he kind of starts speeding it up because he
yeah.
doesn't want to lollygag.
And at this point, I had Googled what Dean and DeLuca was. So where they were sitting, I was like, "Oh, is that the other side of the store?" I was like, "Is this? Did it open up? Like it looks bigger
Sure.
now?"
Yeah.
um, and is this where he gives her the necklace?
Well, he talks about the fact that he starts confessing what he was feeling. He explains to her, when we were carving the pumpkins and I was telling you about this, when I was back at home with my mom and my dad, I felt like I was the interloper. Like they would have gotten along better had I not been there. So he just had this very scared feeling of being there. And now when he came to New York, it was kind of his refuge. And when somebody invaded his personal space,
Hmm.
he felt very violated again. And that's what made him feel like this. So he tried to explain to Felicity why he feels the way he does. And he's really resistant about sharing too much about the relationship with his dad, as well as his dad's behavior. And his dad's a recovering alcoholic. And I can't remember if Ben shared that or not yet. But, he's got some demons that are why Ben is offstandish the way he is.
He did
And
mention
so,
his father drinking. He didn't full on
yeah,
say alcoholic, but he kind
yeah,
of said sometimes he would drink or something. Yeah.
exactly. So much so that he's done damage to his body, and that will come out in seasons later to come.
Okay.
But he then feels really bad that Felicity lost this necklace. He feels responsible and he gets up and he's like, got this necklace for her. And he gets up to put it on her. And at first it kind of falls. And it's like, they must have planned that out because I feel like they use that in the opening credits later when the necklace first falls and then he gets it and helps put it on. And
Oh.
she's just
Okay.
kind of looking. And that necklace is significant because you're going to see it cued throughout. And it's like an upside down triangle. So it's a very defined necklace that it. And he's like, I realize it's not your grandmother's necklace, but hopefully you can think of it as a replacement in that vein. And he puts it on her and she's kind of now fascinated again with him because he's finally taken the steps to measure up.
Right. I was wondering how they were going to handle this because, like, the way that it was going, I didn't see them resolving or making up in this episode till they did.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I thought this was gonna be like a PTSD like trauma episode, and the next week he was just gonna be fine. Like they
Yeah.
were just gonna
Right.
this is just the issue of the week. But
Yes.
I'm glad that they gave us a little bit of insight.
The rollout is slow, you know what I mean? But you start to learn a little bit more about each one of these characters, and that's a good thing. And that was really smart of the WB because it kept people coming back,
Yeah,
episode after episode, and that's very much college life. You're trying to figure out what's next for you, as well as you're still dealing with some of the demons from your own past and how it's shaped you and conformed you into adulthood. So
it's funny
yeah,
because I during the opening credits, I was like, this feels like it would be like a group of college friends hanging out because some of the shots were blurry, like they were supposed to be like
right,
candid shots, and I was like,
yep,
this feels like pictures that you would have taken in college.
right,
Like we
without a
all have
doubt.
those pictures that are not so great that you'll never post online.
Totally. Yes. Thank God social media wasn't around or that big of a thing for me back then.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like the show. It's, like you said, it's slow, but it feels comfortable and, like, it's interesting. It's not
Yes.
there's not, like, any lulls. It's interesting. Feels like
It
every
doesn't
scene has
have
a purpose.
to me it doesn't have to try that hard. It's not dumbing it down for the audience. Daytime it feels like they got to move things so quickly to try and hold on to the audience, and this program feels like it respects the audience enough to know that I'm here for the meat. I don't have to like binge my meal.
Yeah.
We can have a long 5-course dinner and I'll be okay with it. I don't need to rush out of the room.
There were moments where, like, they were like extended music scenes, and I had the thought, I was like, oh, I wonder what the real song was.
I thought of that in a couple times where I'm like, I bet this wasn't what was here
Yeah.
originally. Yep. Yep.
What made me think of it was because I think they played a Sarah McLachlan song in the pilot or the second episode, and I'm just like, I wonder how they got the rights to that to still use that, but not the other music.
Since they referred to her, since the characters talked about Sarah McLachlan so much and how Felicity listened to it so much, I feel like they knew they were going to have to throw down the money for that. So
Probably.
to stay true, they did with that, but in other ones, in other spots, they made some sacrifices that, again, we don't know because we didn't necessarily see it when it first aired. I know there's Bible pages out there on the internet where people have tracked that stuff, as well as there's an Instagram account out there where they're replacing it too. So you can look that up if you're curious about some of that stuff. And I'm sure people are doing amazing work to try and restore it the way it once was.
Small tidbit going back to the refrigerator and the apple.
Yes.
I felt like that scene was awkward. I didn't know what they were getting at with her like just staring at the apple in the refrigerator. I was like, was this supposed to symbolize something? Like, it just felt like an extended scene for no reason. I was like, this.
Maybe,
What is
maybe
this?
it was the what I would look at it if I was going to say it symbolizes something. It's like she made a big deal out of it to the delivery guy. She's like, "This is my first fridge," and he's like, "Yep, it's a big day." You know what I mean? And he's delivering them left and right, so he's just kind of rolling it out. It's not a big day to him, but it is to her, and it kind of was, and that's why she put an apple in there. And she's probably like,
I feel like
"Oh,
she put
I've
it
got a
and she was just
fridge." And this is mine and it's in there and da, da, da. Yeah, it was kind of funny, which was kind of a funny comparison because then when we see the fridge in Elena's room when she's studying later, she opens it and it's like there's 3 cans of Pepsi in there and she's got this and that and whatever, and I'm like, damn, girl's got the fridge full. Good for
right.
her.
Fully stacked.
There's no bunched up underwear just sitting on a shelf by itself.
I really like Megan. I keep wanting to call her Karen for some reason. Megan.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
she's
Megan is
funny.
good. They start expanding her and Sean too because they do a slow burn and they realize how the audience is receptive to, again, another secondary character, and they start giving them more scenes and more lines.
I guess. Well, obviously they're not. So Sean, the actor that plays Sean, and Megan, they're not regulars because I noticed their
Correct.
names were in the recurring credits.
Yes.
But they do become regulars, right?
Yeah, they do upgrade them, definitely. It doesn't happen, I think, until next season or maybe even season 3, but I think by season 2 they were full-time cast members.
Yeah. But I think that was pretty much it, right?
Exactly.
What
We've got
was the resolution with Julie and Zach? They made up, right?
I
Ish.
think they did make up, and she kind of alludes to, yeah, she'll give him a chance, but she was kind of like, you got to take it slow.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
I remember what happens with them. I'm not really looking forward to that.
Exactly.
But all right, I guess that was it. Well, thank you for joining us for another edition of Felicity. As always, you can find us on all the socials at Queers and Soaps. And until next time, have a great day. Bye.
See ya. Bye.